This is the Allison in Wonderland Mental Health Podcast with your host, Allison Fry.
This is the place that looks through the looking glass and falls down the rabbit hole while discussing mental health.
Join this journey that isn't just about putting mental health into a box that is only about anxiety, depression, or other common topics.
Allison in Wonderland is about everything that is in that box, as well as all of the things that don't quite fit into a box.
Here's your host, mental health advocate, Allison Fry.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Allison in Wonderland podcast. I have a special guest today, but before I let him introduce himself, I would like to remind everyone I am not a doctor. I am not a mental health professional at all. I am a mental health advocate. If you are in a state of crisis, please call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. The suicide hotline has recently changed its number to 988, and you can call and text it at any time, and it will get you in touch with someone in your area. So once again, those resources, they'll be linked in here as well. But we have a really exciting guest today, and I'm going to challenge him a little bit on things because I got some questions. Luke from Hypnosis, an amazing hypnotist that can help with anxiety, smoking, addiction, and I don't smoke. I do all those other things. So I'm really interested to see how this works and what you do. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, if I could just make the disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, although I play one on the internet. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, me too.
Luke Michael Howard, I run a hypnosis company called Hypnosis for 25 years now. Main purpose, I work with a lot of what people in my industry regard as difficult cases, people that have failed with other hypnotists, counselors, psychotherapists, people that have spent. By the way, am I allowed to use explicit language with you, or is it PG? I should ask you, Alison.
Oh yeah, go ahead, swear away.
All right, cool, lovely. So people who spend a shitload of money, we're talking like $100,000 a pop in America, to go to multiple rehabs where it's a beautiful, glorified country club, if you will. But they came out, and the first thing they did is they went to the bar across the street and had some drinks. So people that have really worked other systems that haven't worked for them because it hasn't got to the root of it. So I work with lots of different issues, but typically people with addictions. And for me, everything is an addiction, and not all addictions are created equally, and all an addiction is a behavior. So if I've got someone as a heroin addiction, it's no different than if someone is addicted to alcohol. They're addicted to a toxic relationship, they're addicted to sugar, they're addicted to porn, they're addicted to patterns inside their brain that keep looping, that does not serve them. So for me, everything is an addiction, but addiction doesn't have to be a big scary thing that we're not empowered to overcome. For me, the addiction is just a pattern in the mind, in the body, in the somatic system that hasn't been dealt with yet, hasn't been dealt with in the right way. And when you have a better strategy to deal with it, oftentimes the addiction disappears. Often clients will come to me and they're presenting problem. By the way, the problem is never the problem. Is, Luke, I drink fucking too much. My wife's going to leave me. I've lost the house, lost the kids. Luke, I'm doing so much cocaine. I'm dropping $100,000 a year on cocaine. Oh, my girlfriend's doing it as well, and she's dropping $100,000 as well. And I realize that's why they're coming into me. That's the presenting problem. But I very rarely will deal with that, because underneath it, I don't know if you have this little game. I think you do. I think it's around the world. Jenga, you know, like the little game with the blocks and drinking. So yeah. I'm not doing a commercial for them. I make no money for it. But I presume, for me in my world, I imagine people's problems are like a Jenga game. Now, if they come to me and their presenting problem is they claim to be addicted to cigarettes, they can't overcome it. Most people would go to the top block. Well, they're coming in, they're addicted to cigarettes. Let's just remove that block. The block named cigarettes, the block named alcohol, the block named cocaine, the block named heroin. Let's deal with that. And oftentimes, in my experience, as I make my light a bit brighter so I'm not too dark, in my experience it's a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. That kind of approach doesn't work most of the time. And when it does work, in the rare occasion it does work, it only works for a couple of weeks before their addiction rears its ugly head. So really, my job is to come in. I don't care about the block that's their problem: smoking, addiction, alcohol, toxic ex relationship, obsessive thoughts. I want to find the block, like in Jenga, the drinking game, that when we pull that block out, the whole frigging thing collapses once and for all. So the whole structure that's held up their addiction, their problem, that's disappeared. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was they weren't loved when they were growing up. They were traumatized. They never learned to let go. They never took time to self-love. That sounds a bit sexual, but you know what I mean by that. By giving themselves time, giving themselves some self-care, whatever that may be, whatever they felt they've missed consciously or unconsciously in their mind. So when we pull that down, the whole structure, the thing that was keeping up the addiction, disappears, because they're doing their particular addiction for a reason. And most people have no idea why. Some people are, some people do, but most people are just like, Luke, I'm just bored. Luke, I just do it. I don't know. I don't know. But some people are like, Luke, it just numbs me. It just numbs me. It switches off that part of my mind, body, somatic system that stresses out, just so anxious, the suffering. And for that brief time that I do my particular tipple, my particular drug, it numbs me. And I'm like, what happens when it runs out? The effect runs out. All the emotions come back again, come up. Then what do? I'll take more of the drug, push it down. Come up, push it down. Come up, push it down. And in my experience of that, it not only does it mess up your mind, your body, your psychology, spirit, if you believe in such a thing, but also things get murky, things get confused. And sometimes chronic illnesses come out of nowhere. Cancer, chronic back pain, AIDS, stuff that is like there was no specific thing. But because there was no other way of expressing it, because they keep numbing it with that particular drug of choice, the unconscious, subconscious mind, the bit that emotes the feelings, the bit that stores your memories, the bit that we work with in hypnosis and the kind of healing work that I've done. It's like, oh, so you're not listening to me, the message. So let me create a chronic problem in your body that's really frigging painful, that you're going to feel consistently, like the red alarm, like the alarm bell. There's a fire going off, and maybe you'll stop doing this and you'll listen. So it creates pain in some people's bodies that I work with, but there's no real reason. It's the body, the somatic system, mind, body is like, hey, I need to find another avenue for you to get this message, because dumbass, you ain't getting it when I'm trying to talk to you peacefully. So let me create havoc in your body in the hope that you will fucking get this message and you can heal me.
That sounds it sounds very similar to some things I can picture. So I know that on your website you're like, hey, you need to meet with me before we do this. I love that. I talked to someone else who is a therapist to entrepreneurs, and her one of her philosophies is try it first. You have to meet. You ask for a try-on session, and that you should try to really do that with everyone. And I'm like, that's really important, because it takes you forever to find the right therapist or the right doctor. I hate neurologists. You know how many I've been to? Freaking hate them. We'll get to that. But I do love that you have that. You're like, hey, we got to meet first and make sure that we mesh. And I feel like anybody that you're going to be connecting with on like that deep of a level, it is good to make sure you have a relationship. If you can't stand that person, it's like with you're like a therapist. Like if you can't stand to be in the room with them, you're not going to share with them. So I do love that you do that. Do you find that there are a lot of people that when they have the consultation with you, you're like, this really isn't going to work out? Or is it kind of like, what do you think the mix of that is?
So I'm a real sneaky bugger, and I'm really lazy. And when I do a screening call with people, it's not a hypnosis session, but it's really about me finding out how they work. I find out a little bit about the problem, but how they do things inside their mind. And before we even get to that step, I get people. I took my telephone number off my website, and I think I took my email address as well. And I did it for a reason, because I didn't want people just emailing me. What's the first question they're going to ask? Oh, can you fix me? And how much is it?
Exactly. What's it called? That'd be my first question.
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea if I can help you help yourself, number one. And number two, how the hell could I know how much it's going to be? I don't know how many sessions we're going to need to work. The only way of me knowing, much like the doctor will screen you, or you take your car, you're having some problems with your car, you take it to the mechanic, he has to have a little look underneath the hood, underneath the car. The doctor has to run some diagnostic tests to see where you're at, to see actually what's going on in order to be able to help you. So before we even get to the screening call, potential clients will fill out a form. So if they fill out a form, and I get it, that's about 20 questions. It doesn't take that much amount of time, but it already shows me someone's can't be bothered to take 5 minutes out of their time for a problem that they say is a 10 out of 10. They're lying. They're not where they need to be to shift. Now, let's say I get the questionnaire and I'm going through it and we're not even on the call yet, and I'm just getting red flags after red flag after red flag. I'm going to politely, maybe if they say, the problem's a 10 out of 10, but their motivation to change the problem is a 2 out of 10. Now, I don't want to waste an hour of my life. My screening calls, I'm animated. I'm in there. I'm writing there. I'm working on this screening call. It is work for me. So if I'm going to go into it and the person's not even ready, I don't want to waste my time. I'd rather be working with the person who's like, I'm ready. Look, I might not know what you do yet, even though you've got thousands of videos out of there. But right now I'm in a place where I am motivated. Might be a bit scared. Might not know exactly what you're going to do. Hopefully you're going to cover that in the call today. But I am ready to fucking do something right now. Because if I don't do something, I'm dead or my life is in the shitter. When someone comes in at that place, I'm like, great, so they're sufficiently motivated. But if I'm reading in the form, how long have you had this problem? 10 years. So why are you contacting me now, not 10 years ago? Well, I'm only really contacting you now because my wife told me I should do it, or they'll leave.
That's what I was thinking.
What
Those
kind
twos,
of
it was
motivation?
because their motivation
Yeah.
is somebody's nagging them.
Exactly, and I know, I imagine that their partner is well-meaning, but in order to change, you have to change for yourself. Now, it could definitely benefit people you love and care about, and they can get the spoils of that. But your number one thing is you have to change for you. And if you aren't coming, number one reason for you, you're not taking ownership, you're doing it for someone else, this shit ain't going to work. It don't matter if you summon the planets and get Oprah, Dr. Phil, Tony Robbins, Jesus, Gandhi, and whoever down your round table, they ain't going to change it because you ain't ready.
Let's see, Dolly Parton and Neil Patrick Harris.
There you go.
Get those people to help change you.
Yeah. Fair enough. And Elvis and Johnny Cash.
Yes.
Just a conversation we had off air. If you are not ready, it does not matter. Nothing is going to change. So let's go through the questionnaire, and it looks good. I'm like, all right, I'm getting a feeling that they've answered in full sentences. They've invested. They want some help. Great. So we go on the call. And on the call, I'm just seeing not how hypnotizable anyone is, because everyone's hypnotizable. In order to be hypnotizable, you just need to be able to learn. And most people I've met know how to pedal a bike, or they've learned to speak a language, or a second language, or a third language. They've learned a martial art. They've learned how to drive a car. They have learned something that at some stage they did not know what to do. And that's all that hypnosis is. So the three things that I need is I need someone to, number one, want to change. They need to want to change. They need to want to change for themselves, not for anyone else. But as we said, it can benefit other people. And they have to be able to follow simple instructions. The number one most important thing of all that is, can you follow simple instructions? And I don't say this to sound condescending at all. A lot of people can't follow simple instructions. Simple instruction is, hey, so you're ready, we were halfway into the session, we're about to do hypnosis. Hey, you don't have to do this, but I'm just using you, Alison. Alison, just go ahead, close your eyes now. And then Alison just keeps her eyes open like this. I've had this, and I would sit back and I'd be like, maybe I spoke too fast. Maybe my English accent was too strong for my American friends. So I'll say again, and I'll give a bit of body language. Don't worry, you don't have to do this, Alison. So Alison, go ahead and just
We're going to be like, Allison's going to be clucking like a chicken in a minute, right?
Yes, absolutely. And singing like Dolly Parton.
And I'll say, that would be a trick.
And this like this. all that tells me is they can't follow simple instructions. The instruction was just close your eyes.
Yeah.
I know it sounds simple, but there's so many people that overcomplicate the steps. We were talking before we went on air about the steps to come on your show, right?
Yeah,
And
I
there's certain
overcomplicated it because I wanted it to be perfect.
ways to be perfect. Yeah, but you know what? You've got your steps that are there, and just like you've got your steps before someone comes on your show, I have steps as well, and they're really clear. The first thing is, don't call, don't email me, fill out this form. It's going to take 5 minutes. Second thing, calendar. Choose a day, time that I'm available, you're available. Second thing. Third thing, show up for the call. That's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's free. You're not going to be hypnotized on the call. Just do those 3 things. That's all you have to do. And there's no money involved. Oh, Luke, before I book the screening call, can I just ask you? Well, no, we're going to cover all of that on the screening calls. Your screening call with me is not my first rodeo. I've done about 10,000 of them. So just follow the steps, and it's the easiest way that we can get on the phone and work on the problem at hand, which is causing you to suffer. But a lot of people want to, yeah, but just let me just ask that one thing before we officially start. Well, no, we're going to cover that on the screening call. Do these steps in the same way.
It's those of us that are we're control freaks. You can't like give in.
Yeah, it's in the same way. You wouldn't go to your doctor's office. You're like, doctor, before you put the stethoscope on me, can I see your qualifications? Can I see the last 5 people you've worked in? Can I see my medical chart? Can I just test your blood ratio? Are you available next Friday? No, as a professional, you go in there to be a professional. If I'm hiring someone to fix my car, I don't know anything about cars. So I'm going to go in there like, here's the problem, and have a look. I'm not going to tell him how to do it. I'm paying him because he's the expert. I don't know nothing about law. Don't go into the lawyer and be like, hey, yeah, blah, 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 blah. No, this is the expert. This is why I've brought him in, because I don't have that particular skill set. So I trust the professional and because I've done my research before and I'm pretty good at picking up vibe. So yeah, a lot of people will have control issues, which is interesting. They want control of everything, but the interesting thing is they have no control, because if they had control, they wouldn't be working with me or want to work with me. They would have controlled their issue. So the very fact they're trying to control the session, I'd be like, how's that control working for you? And they'd be like, not very well.
Yeah, and
like,
I
so
think a lot of times you see when people like myself, when we like super control things, it's because there are other areas of our lives that we haven't been able to control. So we control all of the other areas. So super organized controlling, because when I have not had control in the past, I've been burned. So I can understand those people that, hey, my brain works that way.
So when I get a client and I get a feeling I've got somebody like that, I'll just be like, control is really important to you, isn't it? Like, how do you know? I thought you were a hypnotist, not a psychic. And they give me advice. So I'll be like, are you up for a little experiment? And they'll be like, well, sure. Is it going to cost me any more money? No. Is it that? No. Oh, okay. All right. Am I going to be fully clothed? Yes, you're going to be fully clothed. Not going to make me clothed. No, I'm not. It's just going to take about 30 to 60 seconds. All right. They're like, all right. And what, I won't do it with you, but your listeners might want to do it. I'll say to my client, control. They're really into control. Be like, control is really important. They're trying to control the session. They're trying to control their life. It's not working so well. So I'll say to them, all right, here's the instruction. For the next minute, I want you to clear your mind of anything. Just don't think of anything. You're in a safe environment. You're inside. We're doing it over Zoom. You can close your eyes. You can be safe. You're on your nice comfy couch. So just for 1 minute, don't think of anything. Just have a control your mind. Just to clear mind, because there are very little distractions. So I'll set the timer, they'll close their eyes, and I have mercy on them. After 30 seconds, I stop the experiment and I say, hey, how many thoughts did you have? And they're like, oh shit, Luke, I lost count. I'm like, do you see? You don't control shit, but neither do I. All control is an illusion. You don't control it, at least not this part of it. Your cognitive, conscious, intellectual mind that likes to think it's so important ain't controlling shit. The bit that is controlling it is your unconscious, your subconscious, your monkey mind. It's the bit that stores all your memories. It's the bit that's beating your heart. If you had to think consciously about beating your heart or breathing, then the first night you went to sleep, your conscious mind goes offline, your intellect, You'd be dead. I'd be dead. We'd all be dead. But thankfully, our unconscious, the body, the subconscious, continues to beat our heart, continues to breathe our lungs when we go to sleep. We don't need to think about it. It just is. If we're eating a meal, we don't have to worry about all digestive enzymes that have to secrete internally in order for it to go in one end and come out the other end. No, we see our food, we enjoy our food, we chew our food, we swallow our food, and after a while, it's done, and then it comes out the other end. But we don't have to think about it. It just breaks up. It is just digested. And if your body can do that, and if your body can allow you to sleep every night and wake up every day, if your body can allow you to digest every meal you've ever had and you're still alive now, I'm pretty sure it can just allow you to have more control and peace in your life, because that's the part that's doing the work. But the reason why about 90% of the time, statistically, counseling psychotherapy doesn't work is it's all conscious mind. It's all like intellectual masturbation, I call it. Well, I understand, Luke. I understand my problem now. I've been to this many clients and this famous psychiatrist and psychologist. I understand why I've got this label. To which I say, do you still have the problem? Well, yeah, but I understand it. I'm like, I don't care if you understand why or why not you have the problem. After we work together, my ultimate goal for you is you don't have the problem. Insight is okay, and it's useful about 10% of the time. But most people I meet are not dumb. Most people I work with are not dumb. Most people that I work with know why they've got the problem, yet they still have the fucking problem because no one showed them how to let it go easily and effortlessly. And I'm like, if you want to have insight, go to a counselor, 4 years, psychotherapist, nothing against them. I'm in the business of rapidly coming in like a cold-hearted surgeon, with your permission, and fucking cutting out that tumor or trauma from you. And then when it's done, it's done. I don't see someone on an ongoing basis for years and years and years. I come in with their permission, like the surgeon, do the work. And typically, I don't see a client for more than about 3 sessions most of the time, because it's done. The surgery, if a surgery is done well, you don't have to keep having the same surgery.
For real. Yes. So I, about 6 years ago, I was seeing a mindfulness coach, and she was at wit's end with me because I suck at mindfulness. I am so bad at turning off my brain. She'd send me to restorative yoga, and I'll be laying there breathing like, oh my God, I've got all this other crap I could be doing and not this. And so she sent me to a hypnotist, and he was like, he was like, sorry, peace out. This is not working. But I get that. Like I do, like, because I am that person that's just like, no. But so it was just funny that I kind of got fired by the mindfulness coach and the hypnotist. And I was like, I believe in hypnosis. I was like, I'm super fine with this, but like it just, I cannot turn my brain off. It's just, and it doesn't go to sleep on its own. It requires a lot of medication for it.
Well, it's good that your mind doesn't get switched off. If your mind switched off, you'd be dead. So that's a good thing. Even when these yogis are 20 years in a mountain retreat somewhere with no other contact, and they're on their vegan diets every day, and they're doing the 12 hours of meditation a day, they still have thoughts because they're alive. Now they have more of a flexibility where a thought they're focusing on their breathing sensation. A thought comes in, they see the thought, and rather like the most of us, it's our meditation time. Then suddenly we're all ready to meditate, and then suddenly a thought comes in or a memory, and we start like a typewriter. Remember the old typewriters? It starts to go off and off and off, and then eventually an hour's gone. And of that hour that you're supposed to be meditating, maybe you meditated 30 seconds. Right? And you have to put it back. What those people get really good at is the same distractions that you or I get or anyone gets, they come in because it's called being alive, a human. All the same thoughts bubble to the surface, but instead of getting pulled out over and over, they just catch it quicker. So before the typewriter goes off the edge, they grab it, mind gets focused, breath, whatever their particular meditation is. Breathe in, focusing on breath, sensation, memory goes, the mind goes off to what am I going to have to do tonight? They grab it, bring it back. Right? Well, they could just grab it really quickly rather than you or I potentially or someone else. It's an hour, and we're just wasting a whole frigging hour of our time worrying instead of meditating. They just, same thing comes up, and then they just bring it back. It's just like going to the gym. You wouldn't go to the gym and bicep curl 50 pounds if you've never ever bicep curled before.
You would seriously regret it.
Yeah. So you might go in, you might lift 2 pounds, 5 pounds, and instead of doing 20 reps, you might do 5, and that's good enough today. And then tomorrow you might come in and you might do 6. That's good enough for tomorrow. And then after you've done a couple of weeks of that, maybe you go from 2 pounds to 3 pounds. But you can train that while still in your mind, but you're always going to have thoughts, and that's a good thing. The only way to stop that is to die, and I would recommend against that.
Yeah.
And stay alive as long as you can.
It's so funny. I always joke about the people, like the professionals in my life that have fired me. I got fired from my voice teacher because she was like, "You're hopeless." I got fired from the mindfulness coach. I got fired from the hypnotist. I only saw him once. But I do think it's really funny. But what I do think is really interesting is the reason, you talk about it. It's not a addiction, it's a habit. So when I did go to the hypnotist, it's because I do struggle with disordered eating. So I just eat compulsively. Now, I still have those habits, but I've turned it into I eat sugar-free popsicles and stuff like that. So I haven't stopped it. I've just kind of redirected it, but that is why I went. So and I understand the issues, but that's why I had gone. And so that's what I found really interesting. And then also I suffer with what they call chronic headache with migraine tendency. Do you know what that means? It means I have a headache every single day, and it sucks. And I won't take narcotics for it because there were addiction issues with people in my family. And when this first started, I had little bitty kids and a husband that traveled. I was like, if the house catches on fire, I gotta yank these kids out of the bed. I can't be on drugs. And now I'm just like, hey, it's been 20 years. Might as well just not take them. But I think it's really interesting that, like, with your hypnosis, just like anxiety, pain, addiction, all of these things that I can see in my mind where I'm like, I could see how someone would really be interested in that. But then also there's this other part of my mind that's like the skeptic. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting, the difference between, addiction and habit, and really just I'm interested how, the pain, you were talking about how it seeps up and it's like, hey, you've got this other crap going on, so listen to me. And I don't know if anyone else, I've had people tell me they've never had a headache before. I can't imagine those people. But like, pain in your head is like nothing else. I mean, you can't, it takes all of the focus away from everything. So like, my husband will be like, how are you doing today? I have a headache. He's like, well, I know you have a headache, but it's like the first thing that pops into my mind because like it's in my head. So I think it's really interesting. So I'd like to hear kind of like how that pain, how you deal with those things.
Sure. Just before I do that, just one step. This hypnosis stuff and this healing stuff, I don't believe in any of it, by the way. However, I've made a living of 25 years of helping people get these amazing results. And oftentimes I'm looking at it, I'm like, this stuff fucking shouldn't work. This is oaky as hell. This is ridiculous. But I do really want to help the person. And I spent a lot of money studying this stuff. And there is still a part of me that's like, hey, this stuff is nonsense. And then daily, I'm in front of people. I'm like, I know, for example, first time I had someone with chronic pain, let me try and see if I can bring back the story in their head. In my head, I'm like, all right, I can kind of understand how I work with this behavior and this behavior, right? But honestly, how the fuck am I going to help somebody with this chronic back pain that they've had for 30 years? Now, I know other hypnotists, healers, whatever you want to call, have had success doing this. But I'm like, and I know hypnosis can be a very effective modality, but I'm like, my logical mind couldn't wrap around how can words and what I'm saying actually help someone help themselves relieve the pain. So I remember going into the session and I said to the person, it's chronic pain. I think they were reporting it was about a 7 out of 10 on the pain scale on average, right? And I was honest with them. This is like when I was a mere pup in hypnosis, I don't know, 20, 22. And I said to them, listen, no guarantees. No one can guarantee the pain's going to go away. I don't even know if it's going to get any better, but I will promise you one thing, it certainly won't get any worse. And they said, Luke, thanks for being honest. That's enough for me. I still want to work with you. So I did my due diligence and believe in, because by the way, I don't fix anyone. I've helped a lot of people overcome pains, addictions, ailments, performance anxiety, 25 years, well over 10,000 clients. I haven't magically made any of those people changed. I just work with them and help them to change themselves, because I don't do, they're changing themselves, which is a great thing. So when our work is done, it used to always be about my ego. Oh, Luke, you're an amazing healer, hypnotist. Oh, it's so great for my ego. All that love I didn't get as a kid. Oh, my glass was getting filled up. But then I realized by accepting that, I was actually doing a disservice to my clients. Then I changed it, and it was like and people would thrust that praise upon me, and I'd be like, thank you so much, but I want you to understand something. I didn't do shit. You did everything. You just were really good at following simple instructions. But that healing, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever that is to you, that happened, that weren't because of me. That was because of you. So own it. What does that do? That works the opposite of counseling or psychotherapy. It's like, holy shit, I changed me. He guided me like a trainer. You work with a trainer, build muscles, lose weight. He can't do the workout for you. He can't do the nutrition for you. But if you follow the nutrition, you follow the exercise, you create the body that you want, that's on you. You did that. He guided you. He maybe cut out some of the pitfalls, but you did the squats, you did the cardio, you did the keto, the counter, whatever it was, you did the work. So what I do is always about empowering people. So I don't change anyone. So anyways, woman back pain, 7 out of 10. Was honest with her. I don't know if this is going to work, but I know for people it has worked. She's like, thanks for being honest. She comes in, we're working together. I'm throwing a few things out there to see if anything sticks. 3 sessions I do. So she comes in, first session's done. She comes in a week later for session number 2. This was not her name. I'm protecting her through the witness protection plan.
I do that too.
Yeah, Mary comes in. Hey, Mary, what differences have you noticed over the last week? There's nothing's changed, Luke. Still a 7 out of 10. I'm like, on your back, still a 7 out of 10. She's like, yeah. One thing I know about pain is there's 3 parts of pain when it comes to the psychological and emotional aspects. That's past pain, hereditary, historic pain. There's the actual real pain, the actual real sensation that's happening in this moment. And then there's the anxiety of what's going to happen after the session or later on. So example is, on a scale of 0 to 10, Mary, that chronic pain, where is it right now? Oh, Luke, when I woke up this morning, it was, no. What was it right now? Oh, Luke, when I go to the gym later or go up the stairs, no, Mary, where is it right now? And I get this. Her eyes start darting. We call it a transcendental search in psychology. She does this for about 30 seconds. Our eyes are darting to every quadrant. And she comes back. She's like, it's a 1. Because so much was linked to what happened in the past. So much was linked to the anxiety of the future that actually doing that one little bit with clients oftentimes takes out about 2/3 of what it is. And what remains, we'll deal with. What remains is what is really physically going on in the moment.
That makes sense, because if you think about people having pain when they've had an amputation and they feel that phantom pain, and so that's the historical pain. So it makes perfect sense.
Very common, very common. I have worked with people who with leg pain, right leg's been chopped off for a few years, and I'm looking at it, logical mind, right? How the fuck are they feeling pain in something that doesn't exist?
But it's so common.
Is my gut reaction. But I've worked with more than a few of people who've had amputations, and it is real to them. because I see it. I see them. I see the physiological reaction. I'm not even just going by their words. And it is real. They are really feeling pain in something that is no longer there. Is a memory. It's no longer there. So yeah, that little bit can be enough to start taking some of those blocks out of the jungle, the ultimate problem, if you will, the problem that actually created the addiction, the chronic pain, the anxiety, the depression. So now their problem starts to become a bit unstable, which is good. So then with this particular lady, if memory serves me right, we did a bit of regression, right? Regression, just going back to when the pain first started. Because look, I don't need you to regress me. I know why I've got the pain. 30 years ago, I was in a car accident. I got rear-ended, whiplash, never had pain before in my back. That's why. And all these specialists have worked with me for 30 years. Nothing's changed. You don't need to regress me. I already know. As soon as I hear I already know, alarm bells go off. I understand. You don't really know. So we did a bit of regression. Lo and behold, what happened for lovely Mary, she was about 55 when she came to see me, is 2 weeks before she was rear-ended, she found out her husband was cheating on her. And in order to not have her husband leave, she started to develop this back pain. He stayed with her to look after her. And then I asked her unconscious mind. Her unconscious mind basically said, in order for the pain, we got the pain from a 7 to a 1 or a 2. And it was sticking.
Great. That's good.
That's not enough for me. Not enough for me. For most people, it's not. I take this stuff really seriously, right? It's like I feel like I'm a fighter. We're talking about MMA at the beginning, and if I know I can actually not win on the scorecard, but I can win by a submission or a knockout, that's glory. Not just for me, but for them. I want to do a nice, clean job. So I'm speaking with her unconscious or subconscious. She's out like this. And it said to me, I asked, what do we need to, what do you need to do? What do we need to do in order for Mary to let go of this once and for all? And it says she needs to forgive her husband. I'm like, okay, great. Brought her out of trance. Hey, Mary, do you remember? How much of that do you remember? She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I forgot about my husband cheating on me. And I certainly forgot it was 2 weeks before the accident. I'm like, okay, do you remember what your unconscious said about how to heal you? And she's like, no, remind me. Well, I didn't say it. It said that you need to with your husband. Are you willing to do that? Because she chose to be with him a subsequent 30 years after, right? So she's still with him. And she said, no. To which I said, you do understand that forgiveness doesn't make it right if someone wrongs you. And you've already decided to be with him another 30 years. So forgiveness doesn't mean, hey, you cheated on me, you wronged me, you get to do it again. No, it's just about that rucksack of rocks you've been carrying around the suffering for years. It's about you putting it down so you don't have to carry that burden. It isn't making it right for them. It's about making it right for you.
Yeah.
So knowing that, are you willing to forgive your husband? No. Mary, you understand? I've got her on the ropes. Right?
I'm loving her. This is hilarious. I feel like
I'm seeing victory. I'm seeing victory. I'm like, I got to hit her with everything. This is like 20 years ago. I said, Mary, what was I going to say? Forgiveness. I'm like, you don't even have to tell your husband about this. It's not that you have to go up to him and say, I forgive you. All you need to do is forgive the part of your husband that you carry inside. You never have to do this actually out loud.
He doesn't have to know.
He doesn't have to know. It's an inside job. Knowing that now, Mary, are you willing to forgive him in order for you to be completely pain-free for good? She said no. I said, Mary, I respect your decision, but you do understand that you choosing not to do this does mean that you most likely are going to be keeping a percentage of pain in your back. She goes, look, I fully understand. Thank you for your work. This is enough for me. She knew. She just she just couldn't do it. And it wasn't about him, it was about her.
Yeah, that's I mean, I can see that. And then even when you're talking about the anxiety of future pain, I do that. I will go out of my way to not get a headache. So I will not go hiking because my heart rate will get too high and I'll get a headache. So it does make sense that like it's the before, like what used to happen and what your anxiety, if you could just think about the right now, that makes perfect sense. So I definitely get that with the pain. That makes sense. And in my mind, I don't think I would have understood the correlation if I hadn't been able to like picture that phantom limb pain. That I've also seen people who have had, their leg amputated have that same pain. So like it's not like just something you see on TV where they're like, oh, my leg hurt. No, it's a real thing. Yeah, it's intense. So
Absolutely.
it's interesting because you were like, I don't believe this stuff, but it works. It almost seems to me like it's really just a whole different way of doing therapy because you're having them do the work. So people think hypnosis and they're like, oh, Vegas people clucking like a chicken doing, you know what I mean? Like they think of this cheesy TV, propaganda version of it. But it sounds like your process is just kind of taking therapy and flipping it and being like,
So how I work with people is most lay people, right? They think that hypnosis is what they've seen on TV or what they've seen in Las Vegas. It's not that, or they've seen in a Hollywood movie. It's not their fault. They've never looked into it before. It's just something presenting. And sometimes it can be like that. Sometimes for shits and giggles, I'll go out to, we got a place in Toronto called Kensington Market. And in the summer, they have Pedestrian Sunday. So it's like a earthy, crunchy, hippie kind of vibe. A lot of street performers, musicians working there. So I'll go out there with my girlfriend, the Hypno Pixie. We'll wear our T-shirts which say, ask me to hypnotize you. We'll have like a sandwich board there. And we're not there to do therapy or change work with people, just to do fun, entertaining stuff. So remember, these people don't know me. They haven't, their belief system hasn't been filled in by, oh, we've heard about Luke knows this, Luke Howard, he's great. They don't know me from Adam. So I've got none of that on my side. Number two, they've never had a screening with me. They haven't paid me for work. They haven't come to one of my shows. And they did not wake up that morning and said, you know what? When I'm walking from A to B, I hope a hypnotist stops me and asks if I want to be hypnotized. So there's no buy-in. It's as pure an art form or as pure a martial art as it's possible. They just walk in and they see the T-shirt. They're like, oh, can you hypnotize me? I'm like, absolutely. Put your feet together, and I go straight into it. And I'm not in the street to do therapy. That would not be the place. But fun stuff, like with their permission. And these are people that it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something. So they're just shopping. Yeah. Where I'll glue their, well, I'll drop them to the ground safely. I'll make sure they don't have any health things, but I'll drop them to the ground, and then I'll ask them to open their eyes, and I'll be like, "You're not hypnotized, are you?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh, why are you on the floor then?" I don't know. I'm like, "You could stand up, can't you?" And I've got hundreds of videos on my YouTube, Hypnosis, men, women, tall, short, black, white, everyone, right? And you'll see, and they can't move. And because I'm like, surely they can move, but why would they play along? So then I'm like, let me see if I can break the trance. Because I think they must be playing along. So I'm like, I'm like a social scientist. Let me test this. So then I pull out $10. If you can move, touch this $10, you can keep it. They can't move. $20, $30, $40. I got up to $1,030, an iPhone 11 when it was new, and my girlfriend's Tiffany ring.
Oh my goodness.
And that's right in front of them. I'm like, all you got to do is, you're not really hypnotized, are you? Like, no, all you got to do is stand up. And when you touch this, it's all yours. Not one person ever, men, women, tall, short, white, black, gay, straight, not one person has ever. I'm like, there must be something to this, because this is not even a belief. They do not know me. They haven't bought a ticket to a show. They don't know. They haven't gone on my website. They didn't know this was going to happen. But I do that stuff because I want to show people how powerful their mind is. So if they can be glued to the ground by a complete stranger with words, then maybe if they come to see me, we can glue in that New Year's resolution of eating in a way that's supportive for them in achieving the kind of weight they want to lose. Sometimes I'll just stick people's eyelids together. And I'd be like, and you're not hypnotized, are you? Like, I'm not hypnotized at all, Luke. Why are your eyes closed? Are they? Yeah, I'm like, try and open your eyes, find you can't. And I see this. I'm like, really try it. And I do that, not to impress them, but to impress upon them. If you can take something involuntary, like gluing your eyes shut with just words, then what else can you close the lid on in your life? Past relationships, past addictions. If you can create that in your own body, and I'm not creating it, they're doing it, then what else can you put the lid on? What else can you close? What else can you signal off? Sometimes I'll invisible myself in front of someone, and I'll go in front of someone and I'm like this, and their eyes are just like this, and I'll move around and I'm looking to see sneakily if their eyes move when I'm moving around and they're just trying to be nice. Why do I do that? Not to humiliate anyone. I do that because if you can invisible me, someone real who's standing in front of you doing all this business and your eyes aren't moving because you honestly can't see, then maybe you can invisible that limitation that you've had your whole life that says I'm not good enough, that's been in front of you. And maybe you cannot see that anymore. So I do all these little fun things, not for entertaining and for clicks on YouTube, but always to direct someone's mind. If you can do this, what else can you do to make your life fucking amazing? Because this is how powerful you are.
That's I'm gonna have to go look that up on YouTube and put the links
go
into there because they're great.
Hypnosis, street hypnosis. I think there's 200 videos. Check it out.
So I do have one question that I thought of when you were talking about you did the regression and helped the woman remember that her husband had cheated on her. Now in the 90s there was like this whole like regressive therapy hypnosis thing that they were trying to find, you know, like all of these sex cults, and there was just like all of these children that were accusing people of molesting them and all this stuff, and it was just like this insane thing. And I for some reason I feel like regressive like memories was kind of what they were talking about with that. So how do you and they were talking about how really what happened was that they were putting memories into kids' heads, and not only did it destroy the lives of the people that were put in prison like based on this, but they gave that child trauma. Like they gave them the trauma of being abused when they never had been. So so how do you make sure that like they're leading you to the right place and that they're not? I don't even know how to really word it. I'm just curious because I just know that whole craze in the 90s and it was just like
So what you're talking about is false memory syndrome. And here's a point to understand. It wasn't hypnotists that were working with these people. It was psychiatrists and psychologists. The average psychologist, psychiatrist, the last time I checked, when they go to school to study psychiatry, psychology, last time I checked, they do less than 2 weeks of their 4-year degree, 2 years masters, less than 2 weeks on hypnosis. So it's important to understand that there is lots of books about false memory syndrome. Mid-80s, kids would go to the psychiatrist, psychologist, and they'd come out and suddenly they found out their parents were abusing them and they never knew. Most of these cases, if not all of them, were proved to be false. So number one, like any field, there's good hypnotists, bad hypnotists, good psychiatrists, bad psychiatrists, good mechanics, bad mechanics.
Do your research.
Yeah, exactly. But first of all, the thing is, if I may potentially, I'm a soldier, and I've got tremendous post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm coming back from a war-torn zone, right? And I'm in a safe environment now. My head knows this. My body still thinks I'm in the fucking war. The semantic system. You can logic it all you want. They know they're not in Afghanistan anymore. Their body still thinks they're in the middle of a fucking war, and a hand grenade's going to go off and they're going to die, right? It's semantic is the body. So if I'm a soldier, big, heavy problem, right? And I'm working with a hypnotist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I probably want to work with someone who had more than 2 weeks training in this specific area. If I'm going to court for someone says I murdered somebody,
you don't want the guy that just graduated.
I probably want to resurrect Johnny Cochran's corpse, because I know he's really good at getting people off of murder.
You don't want the guy that failed the bar 4 times.
Exactly.
I think that's an interesting point, because I do suffer from PTSD and I do have repressed memories, but I have an amazing psychiatrist, and she is like, we don't try to do hypnosis or anything. Like, we don't do it, but it makes perfect sense, because she's like, it's not a psychological best practice. It's not a best practice for your therapist to do that. So I think that really keys it in. It's like, if you find someone that has been trained to do this, but if you go to a therapist and they're like, hey, let's hypnotize you, that's where you got to be like, maybe I should question this a little bit. I think it's a really interesting point. Like, you really did very well answer like the question that I was thinking, like, how is this different? And it's because it wasn't hypnotist doing it.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't want
really
the Vegas guy doing it either.
Yeah. And the other important thing to understand is it's about not asking leading questions. So I got, I don't know, 357 techniques, and I make up 5 every day, right? Someone made up all this shit. It's all made up.
Yeah.
So is our problem. All right. Doesn't mean it isn't real. Doesn't mean we don't suffer from it. Doesn't mean we don't feel it. So someone comes in and let's say I do regression with them. I am not filling in the blanks. So let's say they've got anxiety. Anxiety comes up in their body. In a moment, we're going to go back this time. Blah, 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 blah. Whenever it first reared its ugly head. 3, 2, 1. Are you inside or out? Are you with someone or by yourself? How old are you? Look at your feet for an indication of your age. Report what's going on. Not, are you sitting on your uncle's lap? With your uncle's hands? This is all leading.
Yeah, that's
unconscious. Is vulnerable, and it's like they're unconscious, subconscious. You're in a pool and they're drowning, and you throw a life preserver in. The life preserver is someone unscrupulous or not trained saying, giving them the information that's not there. Mine is report what's going on, and I just sit back, report what's going on, and what else is going on. Okay, so and what are you feeling? And you might be like, well, is that the honestly, is that the first event? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because whatever
the one that their mind's taking them.
Yes. Whatever. If it wasn't the first event, why did it bring this one in? It brought this memory in for a reason.
I think that's really. I think that's a great takeaway, because I was like, I'm curious, just because like it really. It makes so much more sense to me now, because, I do have the great therapist, and she is the one that does PTSD. Like, she is, I did my research and I found the one that was great for me. And she's like, no, we're not going to try to pull these memories out of your head. It's not psychological best practice. And it makes sense, because like, you're not going to go have the lawyer put the new engine in your car. Highly trained, went to a lot of school, but he's not going to fix your car engine, most likely. So I think
I'm not going to go to a boxing coach to teach me how to kick. He can teach me a mean right cross, but he ain't going to teach me anything about front kicking a motherfucker that's about to attack me. You want to get the right material. And also, as a change worker, when I'm working with someone, if they email me and they're like, Luke, their first thing is, Luke, do you do past life regression? Luke, do you do regression? They haven't told me one thing about their issue. But they're coming in with that. That's their first thing. Already alarm bells are start. Why are they telling me what to do? And why are they asking me specifically if I do this? And if they do make it to a stage where we are on a screening call, I'll ask them a question like, I noticed on your questionnaire, you talked about past life regression or regression in general. I'm just curious, if you could resolve all your issues around whatever their problem is, presenting from anxiety, depression, PTSD, if you could resolve all of those issues around your problem and it no longer made you suffer, would it matter if we regressed you or not? So the answer I'm looking for is no. As long as it goes, I'm happy. If they're like, no, Luke, that's not enough, I need you to regress me, I'm probably going to refer those people on because there's something else going on and I don't really want to play that game.
Yeah, I started the podcast Allison in Wonderland as I'm writing my memoir, Allison in Wonderland. It's kind of a psychological case study of my life. And I recently wrote what I call the lost chapter. And it talks about the beginning of the memory, the end of the memory, but the middle is what's missing. And it does kind of talk about like, part of me feels like I need to finish the memory to make it be okay. And then part of me is like, my mind built up these barriers for a reason. But I guess it's like, yeah, if I didn't have insomnia or anxiety, then it wouldn't matter if I remembered or not. So like it makes sense being like, hey, if I could go without remembering and then be okay, then I could see how it would be a red flag if they're like, no, I must remember. Because why don't you want the bad shit out of your head? Why would you want more bad shit in your head?
And another red flag, and I have this, more than a few times every year, and it's like, Luke, here's the email. Luke, I think I was sexually abused when I was 7. Can you regress me back to that time so I can know if I was sexually abused or not? To which I say, if you went back to that time and you found out you were sexually abused, do you think you are going to feel better or worse about your life? Generally, it's like fucking worse because it's a terrible, horrible thing. In which case, it's not ethical for me to take you back there to make you feel worse about stuff that may or may not have happened. I'm in the business of empowering people, not fucking them, drowning them, holding their head down.
Yeah, you've really won me over because, I was like, how do I feel about it? Like, I didn't even know how I felt about it coming into the call because I loved your video about, hey, you got to meet with me and you have like this great dynamic and this great energy. But then at the same time, I'm like, I'm skeptical, like I'm curious, but you have logical answers to all of the questions that you would think kind of have holes where people are like, hypnosis? Like, really? But you really understand what you're doing. And in my mind, it is kind of like a whole different way of doing therapy. You're not putting thoughts into people's head. You're a professional, you've trained. How many, like you said, you've been doing this for what, like 25 years now?
The last time I counted, so I call myself, that's because most lay people have a box to put hypnosis in. If I said everything else I did, it would be too much. But if I look at pure hypnosis, I think last count 32 certificates. If I look at healing as an art or change work, I think we're up to 60. I used to collect certificates. I used to always be about the procedure. Then I realized I was the only one. Me and other hypnotists were the only ones that got off on the certificates. I think in 25 years, I had 3 clients in 25 years asked about certificates. So I emailed them the whole list of everything. They're like, okay, you're good. Most people don't give a fuck as long as they can be helped. Like, look, I don't give a fuck if you use shamanistic huna, timeline therapy, CBT, hypnosis, some other weird shit I've never heard of. Just help me out of the fucking
LCD.
suffering.
Yeah, do some like acid trials, no big deal. Well, I think that makes sense. Also, like in my mind, like whenever I talk to people and they're like 20 years out from college, and when they introduce themselves, the very first thing they do is tell you where they went to college and what they studied. It's like, is this really like the most important thing about you 20 years later? Because it's just very strange.
Yeah. I'll do like expos, right? And I'll do a talk at an expo, like an earthy, crunchy expo.
Granola.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll have a booth there, right? And the booth is, you know, publicising hypnosis. I won't do therapy there because it's not the right environment, but
Right.
I'll do some fun stuff to like the sticking their hand to the table, sticking their just to show them how powerful, as I mentioned earlier, we call it hypnotic phenomenon, right? But people come up to me like, "Oh, Luke, you're a hypnotist. How does that work?" To which most hypnotists would go on a long soliloquy of about 45 minutes that would bore the fuck out of someone. So my answer is, I could talk about it for 45 minutes and bore the shit out of you, or we could just do it and I could show you. What would you prefer? So you can show me right here in front of these 10,000 people that are going around? Yeah. Because hypnosis is an experimental learning. It's not mental masturbation. You're reading a book. I've been doing it 25 years. I was voted the #1 hypnotist in Toronto 2019. I still have no fucking idea how it works. It just works. I have this thing called a cell phone. If I text my girlfriend now, I know that the words on the screen will get to her. She's on vacation in Cuba right now. I have no fucking idea
How that works. Just
to Cuba, but I just know that it works. So for me, hypnosis and what I do is the same. I don't know how the sausage is made. I just know I enjoy the sausage.
exactly.
I don't need someone
I
explaining.
don't want to know. I don't want to know how the sausage.
You
is
don't want to
made.
know how the sausage. Terrible stuff. Bad.
No.
No.
Yeah, that's all really great. So, I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything that you wanted to go over that I maybe derailed us? Because I do that sometimes. I'll derail the conversation.
No, I think you did an exemplary job. If anyone is interested in healing something, whether that be an addiction, whether that be a particular behavior or a chronic pain, something like that, and they've tried other avenues and that hasn't worked, perhaps you've even tried other hypnotists and it hasn't worked for you for whatever reason, then you go over to my website, lukenosis.com, Luke like me, Luke nosis.com, and book on a screening call. It's free. We have a chat for after I review your application for about an hour over the phone. I can find out no obligation, find out a little bit more about you, where you're at, tell you a little bit about how specifically I think I can help you help yourself, and then we go from there. If you just want to find out more about me in general or be entertained, go over to my YouTube. Yeah, and if you want to like watch me doing some fun stuff for shits and giggles, just in Vegas as well, just go on to the Street Hypnosis, Luke Gnosis, and then one of the playlists will be Street Hypnosis. Click on it, you'll see me hypnotizing people on the street and having some fun with them as well. So,
Cool, and I'll make sure that all of those are linked everywhere. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. I know it's super new. I've got like 2 episodes published. So I really appreciate you coming on. And then I will make sure everybody gets all of the information. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.
Also, remember, this show does not contain medical advice that you should follow without speaking to your doctor. If you or someone you know is in crisis, call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room. You can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988.